why did 2000s TV shows look like that? Let's get into it, man.
Cars of Pimp My Ride to iconic sets, characters, and cartoons, you can instantly tell when a show's from the 2000s. But why is that? And what changed?
I'm gonna play Life is Strange next.
To get some answers, I had to go back to a very different time for television, when things were allowed on screen that would destroy careers today. I uncovered some pretty unexpected stuff, and there's a few shows that I'll never be able to watch the same way again. But here we go. Kick back and get some snacks, because we're about to go way back to try and find out why. There are only a few TV shows that are getting an entire section, and this is one of them. If you can't tell why, you're in for a wild ride, because it's time to talk about cars. But first, I want you to picture your dream car. Doesn't matter if it's an AU Falcon or a McLaren. Maybe even drop a comment about it. Now, I'm no mind reader, so I can't guess what car you're thinking of exactly, but I can tell you that absolutely none of you are picturing something
like my dream car, quote unquote dream car. It's literally just like a 2000s Honda Civic, 2007, 2008, 2009. I'm not really a car guy. Not gonna lie.
Like this. However, for a very brief chapter in history, thousands of people's dream cars were heavily modified beasts with flame decals and chunky gold rims. If you weren't big into the car scene, you might have only been exposed to this through Pimp My Ride, one of the biggest and most bizarre shows from the 2000s. We'll dig into that soon because there's a term we need to get familiar with first. Sex spec. It's not a brand of glasses, but it is the name for the hotted up Nissans, Toyotas, and Hondas from the 2000s. It describes over-the-top customization. Things like nitrous, stickers, and Xboxes in glove boxes, people pop locking to subsonic subwoofers and not stock hydraulics. You can think of it as the modern version of 50s hot rods, only with a much lower barrier to entry and, consequently,
these cars were fire, bro.
Results. Everyone was competing to have a more
Fast and Furious cars and shit like that. I can't lie, like, as a dude, like, shit like that is cool. Don't get me wrong. I'm just personally, like, not really, like, into cars. Like, yo, you ever see that C3 709? Like, I don't know all these chemical compounds and shit, bruh.
Just sound system than the next guy. I don't even know what part of the car I'm looking at here. It's like a 1960s Batmobile. Anyway, it's clear that this trend was pretty significant, even if somewhat niche. It would, of course, start to break into the mainstream in the mid-2000s, which can be attributed to a couple pieces of media. Firstly, Fast and Furious.
Yes, sir.
This put a spotlight on the growing car mod scene of the 90s and caused irreparable damage to thousands of Honda Civics. By the time Tokyo Drift was released, it was already too late.
Maybe I should get a Honda Civic and do that. That should look fine. You think I can do that?
Thousands of Honda Civics. By the time Tokyo Drift was released, it was already too late. In the world of video games, you could see this style reflected as well in Need for Speed Underground and various other 2000s
I would take a Tesla
races.
too.
The main focus was on Japanese performance cars for a pretty simple reason. They were relatively affordable, powerful, and customizable. Even today, aftermarket kits and parts are readily available for so many models. The potential to squeeze an extra 100 horsepower out of your Honda's B16 and slap on some gold rims was both enticing and in many cases entirely achievable. Not that performance mods took priority, of course, as you'll soon come to find out. And that brings us to Pimp My Ride. Produced by MTV from 2004 to 2007, Pimp My Ride operated with a fairly simple premise. American rapper Exhibit would go to your house, tell you your car was a piece of shit for 15 minutes, then reveal it was getting pimped. They'd usually pick cars that were run down or on their last legs to make the transformation look more impactful. Now, I can't explain how badly I wanted one of these things. I would have done anything for Exhibit to come and
I just seen Ben Grimm.
I can't explain how badly I wanted one of these things.
I see Mr. Fantastic and Human Tour. It's okay.
I would have done anything for Exhibit to come and put an Xbox 360 in the boot and a 20-inch sub. Some of the modifications were just outright insane though. In one episode, they chucked 400 carats of diamonds onto a rotating hood ornament. We actually had our numbers guy crunch the numbers on this one, and it turns out that probably wasn't real. I think the best series of mods that were done were to this guy's van. The door doesn't open unless you win a slot machine, and there's a fucking grand piano inside it, just in case he wanted to, you know, use his van. Looking back,
See,
you
they
can
were announced
clearly
for
tell
Avengers
that
Doomsday
Exhibit
earlier.
thought a lot of the mods
Yeah,
were
but
complete bullshit.
that account on Twitter, like a lot of those Marvel accounts, you got to take that shit with a grain of salt because it's not really reliable all like that.
Like, he knows that hood ornament is going to be gone within a day.
400 carats of actual diamonds.
Come on, dude.
Today, he seems pretty keen
Unless
to
it was
distance-
actually, I only seen the post from those accounts. I don't know if an official posted it or not. I don't know. I just seen it from like those top accounts. I don't know.
himself from the show and assume absolutely no responsibility for what happened to those cars. And to be honest, I can't blame him.
Did they even tell you anything about like, hey, like this is what we're doing when we're fixing the car?
No, I was not responsible for none of that shit.
Either way,
Damn.
some of his reactions are pure gold.
Hooked you up with the real deal right out of this exhaust.
Mackie
With
therapy.
these, you can see for miles.
Yeah,
and
a lot of
miles
those
to come.
Marvel
You
accounts,
can
they're
even
kinda
see the
like-
future with these things. And to see through
Just take it with a grain of salt.
Only thing you have to do is concentrate. Oh, gosh.
At the very least, Pimp My Ride would be tame enough to air today. The other MTV shows in this video? Definitely not.
Okay. Talk to me. Man, I miss DVDs.
DVD menus. If you know, you know.
Oh,
and
he's
if you
showing his
don't-
face now. Yo, I like that. Pause. I like seeing like because remember that girl the animal page we watched, she started showing her face now. A lot of the people that I watch, they're starting to show their face now. Holy stutter. Oh my god.
It doesn't matter
That was
because
bad.
I'm going to talk
That was
about them
bad.
anyway. These used to be iconic, and not just because they were burned into your subconscious after falling asleep during a movie. Waking up to Shrek's menu was essentially a rite of passage. And this wasn't just films. DVDs for shows were filled with unique animations, hidden games, and Easter eggs, and about as much entertainment as the actual episodes. Of course, this all fell under bonus content. There was nothing like finding out you still had a bunch of deleted scenes, commentaries, and more to sift through. It
Facts.
felt like you were getting so much more value out of your purchase, and the feeling
Right.
of exclusivity was a great way to encourage people to expand their physical collections.
For
You
real.
weren't just buying access to the show, you were buying a bunch of cool extras that, at the time, were hard to find anywhere else. So why am
used
I
to be a
talking about
society,
DVD
man.
menus in this video? Well, they were an essential part of the TV experience at home that has largely vanished. With their Easter eggs and
Yo, I will forever say this, bro. And I can say this because I also been to Blockbuster. Nothing wrong with Blockbuster, but Hollywood Video Store shits on Blockbuster. I will say it every time. Hollywood Video Store shits on Blockbuster. I'm gonna keep it a stat.
behind the scenes content, many acted as extensions of the shows themselves. And I can bet that a lot of you spent hours digging through various menus long after
I don't
you
know if
finished
Hollywood
your
Video Store
fifth
was global
rerun
like
of the
that.
Mighty Boosh.
I got something to show you. I got a mangina.
I was gonna show a bunch of the most iconic menus here, but instead I want to put that question to you guys in the comments. Which DVD menu was the GOAT? From Hannah Montana to That's So Raven, you can spot a Disney Channel show from a mile away. Not only being iconic, they shared
Go.
distinct visual characteristics that you'd only find in the
Go.
2000s. Sets were vibrant, clean, and colourful, towing the line between remaining relatable and realistic and feeling like an exaggerated version of teen life.
Oh.
I'm from Australia and I didn't watch these shows too much, but I can't deny that they influenced my expectations
talking about
for high
Australia.
school. Anyway, perhaps more iconic than
Not
the
the UK.
copy-pasted schools and stages was the fashion. Not necessarily for the right reasons though. Whether it was chunky belts, bizarre layering, or markers, it was rare to have a character that wasn't completely nerfed by their
Bro, that's crazy. We're really calling these outfits ugly? Nah, I'm not gonna lie, that's wild. Cause I'm not gonna lie, this is different. This is as unique as it gets. Nowadays, don't nobody be dressing different or like creative. Like, I don't know, me personally, I don't think this shit's ugly. I think that shit's creative and fire. Unique, its own thing. Bruh, hey, that's just me though.
I'm just
I don't
gonna
know.
rapid fire some of the more interesting trends from the shows because explaining all of these would take an entire video. Jeans with skirts, this hat, insane layering, fur coats, Disney knees, sequins, weird belts, and neon clothing. I swear every school had a kid that would exclusively wear like fluoro green though,
facts.
so I don't think all the blame falls on Disney here. Interestingly, the over-the-top pinks, sequins, and aesthetics of shows like Hannah Montana often overlapped with much larger cultural movements at the time. One of the more notable was... Remember when people used to deck their
Bedazzled.
iPods out in rhinestones? What about when they dressed like this? Why
Yup.
was that, and why did people stop
And they trying to dress like that still to this day. To this
doing
day.
it? Well, we like to talk about aesthetics on this channel, and one of the biggest from the 2000s was McBling. Really quick, if you enjoy this kind of content or just grew up in the 2000s, heavily intertwined with things like reality TV and fashion, let's talk about those and find out where it all came from. Because yes, there is a reason that people dressed like this. To start off, you can identify this style through a few key elements. Animal prints, hot pink, tracksuits, and brands like Juicy Hock Tour were all fashion staples. Even some font
Hold on, I know I'm not tripping.
suits and brands like Juicy Hock Tour
Nah, bro. We not letting that slide, bruh. Did this nigga just say Juicy Hawk Tour? This nigga just said Juicy Hawk Tour, bruh. Nah, he funny for that.
elements. Animal prints, hot pink, tracksuits, and brands like Juicy Hock Tour were all fashion staples. Even some fonts are associated with the aesthetic, with Candace, for instance,
My mom has
being
some
used
Juicy
for Pimp My
Contour.
Ride. The name itself is a combination of Mc from McDonald's and bling. I'm not 100% sure why, but I assume it has something to do with the occasionally cheap look of flashy jewelry and rhinestones. Turning to TV again, shows like Bratz and their accompanying toy lines were doing numbers. The
Bratz was
combination
fire.
of designer bags, sunglasses, and halter tops was dominant aesthetically and financially. In truth, the influence was so strong that if you search up Y2K today, McBling is the only thing you'll really find, despite being quite distinct from the actual look of Y2K futurism.
Oh, look at TLC.
The latter, of course, was more shiny, chrome, and advanced looking, coming a bit before the boom of McBling in 2003. Another key factor behind the spread of this style was the nature of celebrities and the culture around them. People like Paris Hilton, Beyonce, and Britney Spears all helped drive the fashion forward and into the wardrobes of millions. So if this aesthetic was so popular, where did it go? I mean, people were not dressing like this in the 2010s. That's a whole other can of
Yeah,
worms that I'm
2010s
far from
was
excited
different,
to
man.
cover
You just
soon.
had to be there.
In fact, this early look was largely gone by 2008. The shows that featured it had peaked and slowed down, and so had the people wearing it. You can attribute some of its disappearance to things
Honestly, bro, a lot of the people that were wearing this shit around that time, they just grew up. They just grew up. Same with like alternative shit, like, you know, what people would refer to as like emo and shit, goth or whatever. Like a lot of them niggas just grew up. Like they were young, you know, teenagers, maybe like early 20s and shit, but them niggas just grew up. They cut their hair. They wore less piercings and shit. The niggas just grew up. But look now. The shit's coming back. and guess who's the main consumers? The youngins, the teenagers, early 20s.
things like the 2008 financial crash. The flashy, expensive clothing suddenly felt pretty out of place and borderline distasteful. Anyway, if you jump forward to the present day, it's safe to say that the style has had a pretty big comeback, largely
punk rock
thanks to
playlist,
its
that's
popularity
fire.
on TikTok and online stores. Even though it's usually referred to under the umbrella term Y2K, it's interesting to see it do the rounds again. Because the next thing will be—
what does Y2K actually stand for? I never knew. What does it actually stand for? Is it just like a saying, or like, I don't know. I always
covering is
heard
definitely
Y2K.
not coming back, and you'll see why. I knew the buyer, I just needed the seller. So I stayed back and ran the tapes one last time. $11.50 the deal goes down. Bulk, 10% under market
I feel like this is an
price.
ad.
It had to be him, but it got better. Immediately I forever.
It is. Hey, I see Tony Hawk.
Jackass, X Games, and New Metal. If
Y2K
one thing was
came
true
from
about the late
people
90s
thinking the
and
world was
early
going to end in the year
2000s,
2000.
it was that
Oh, that's kind of cool. That's kind of like 2012.
everything was extreme, or at the very least, edgy. You could spot this in branding, music videos, and of course TV shows. Things were significantly more unhinged. Programs pushed the boundaries of entertainment in a way that hadn't been done before or ever since. We'll go over some examples soon, but first let's talk about why. I have mentioned this trend before, as it was kind of mirrored in video games, but we've never really gone into quite that much depth. Broadly speaking, there was a shift in the late 90s, especially in youth culture, towards being anti-establishment, rebellious, and over the top. This was propelled by things like the WWE, then called the WWF, which thrived on shock value and almost acted as a middle finger to those concerned about violent programming. Channels like MTV leaned into this even further, funding and producing content like Viva La Bam, Jackass, and Punk'd. These appealed directly to your stereotypical, edgy teenager frustrated with their parents and the status quo. At the same time, they were entertaining enough to attract massive audiences across all demographics. We'll look at these and their controversies soon, but essentially they were shows that your parents would feel guilty for enjoying, and your younger siblings would watch from behind the couch. A lot of people have come to refer to this period as the Y2K Attitude Era, a time when theaters were filled with movies like American Pie, and television with shows like South Park and Jackass. The term originated from within the WWF, describing a run from 1997 to 2002 that was characterized by violent and risque content and anti-authority narratives. It was edgier and more raw than previous eras, and saw the creation and rise of some of the industry's biggest wrestlers.
No pun intended.
The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and Triple H all became pop culture icons, setting the stage for the WWE we know today. But like I said, wrestling wasn't the only scene that embraced this. If you've seen this logo more times than you can count, you can guess where we're stopping next.
I wasn't really into all this shit, not gonna lie.
Cribs, there was one American cable network that stood out from the rest.
Jackass
it
and
arguably defined an entire generation, platformed some of the most iconic personalities the world had ever seen, and left us with a legacy that was just as confusing as it was legendary. I mean, how many of these shows were actually real, and where is MTV today? We'll get into the juicy...
I remember, I think it was in my house. Somebody in my house had it on. Maybe my brother or something. A guy put like a sock on his dick and like dressed it up as like a snake and then had like an actual snake like bite it. I was like, yeah, like this shit just not for me, not gonna lie.
A bit soon, because first I need to take you back to 12:01 AM on the 1st of August 1981. MTV launches with the hit single Video Killed the Radio Star. On this day, they became the
world's first 24-hour stereo video music channel.
While that seems relatively insignificant now, it's hard to overstate the huge effect that this would have on music and its culture. For instance, it was no longer enough to just make a good song and hand it over to the radio. Putting music videos in the spotlight put the artist in the spotlight, specifically their fashion, visual storytelling, and creativity. And the impact of this was instantly clear. Thriller was released in 1983, raising the bar for what music videos could be. The meta was changing, and it wasn't going to be patched until update 2005.012. Anyway, the important thing about MTV was that it appealed to the youth. It offered teenagers two of their favorite things in one neat little package: music and television. Going further, it wasn't as formal as traditional radio stations, being more rebellious, shocking, and exciting. This set the stage for what it would eventually become, and what most of you will remember it for. Because the next chapter was the 90s, and things started to get a lot more chaotic. Now, at this time, MTV was already a huge commercial success,
I wasn't a RuneScape
but they wanted to try something different. You started to see them release actual shows. Beavis and Butthead, The Real World, and most of these did pretty well, a trend that continued until the mid-2000s. So let's talk about one of the biggest. It also happens to be one of the more controversial, but perhaps not for the reasons you'd expect. We've all seen MTV Cribs. Doesn't matter if you watched it when it was released in 2000 or on YouTube 12 years later. You might remember everyone's house kind of looking like this. Or perhaps significantly more chaotic.
That looks
It
fire.
was really only Steve-O's house actually, but anyway. The premise was fantastic at face value. You get a celebrity, go to their house, and see whatever weird shit they were spending their money on. Steve-O had like a mini skate park in his apartment and a master set collection of bodily fluids on his floor. Others were a lot more tame, but some had a completely different problem. That being, they weren't actually their houses. You might have heard bits and pieces about this before, but the true extent of it is pretty hilarious. The fact is, a lot of these were just random places rented specifically for the show. The Yin Yang twins had a house packed with coastal themed decor, model ships and bizarre appliances. JoJo filmed the show while not even having a house at all. Nothing, even down to the Ferraris and Lamborghinis in the driveways, was safe. A lot of those too were simply rentals. If you have any doubts, all you need to do is look at the episodes that were real. Chris Pontius was probably living out of a van. Redman was rubbing two wires together to make his doorbell work, and his cousin was just sleeping on the floor. I still don't really get why they had to fake so many of them. I feel like the actual reality of...
That's actually crazy. Yeah, I didn't know that wasn't their actual cribs. Damn. It's kind of crazy, huh?
People's situations tended to be far more interesting than the extravagant rentals. Then again, celebrity culture in the 2000s was a whole different beast. Things like tabloids and reality shows thrived on the concept that they lived in unreachable luxury and were almost alien when compared to your average person. As a result, it didn't fit the narrative to show
Jesse
a famous
McCartney
singer
was
living in a house
kind of like
just
Justin
like
Bieber back in the day,
yours.
man.
Today, the public definitely places a little more value on being authentic and humble about success. That said, I think a modern day equivalent of MTV Cribs could be pulled off. But I can't say the same for a few of their other shows. Wild Boys, Viva La Bam. There's a near zero chance that these series could exist today, for reasons that I've alluded to throughout this video but never gone into. They rejected the clean, luxurious celebrity culture of the 2000s and ushered in a new era of entertainment, one that was far wilder than anything before it. I don't even need to talk about these stunts in detail when the names speak for themselves. Pooh Cocktail Supreme, Beehive Limo, Wasabi Snooters, Toy Car, those who know. I'm pretty sure these guys are the reason that the phrase "don't try this at home" was invented. The Jackass crew was on camera non-stop for like half a decade. I'd say Steve-O is the most visually documented person in history, but I've spent enough time on the internet to know better. Or know worse in this case. Either way, the impact these guys had on the look of TV and the internet was ridiculous.
I don't really know too much about
you can
Bam,
find pieces of them
other than him
echoing
being a
through
skater.
the archives of YouTube pranks, movies, and early internet culture. Going further into aesthetics, this era of shows had a very specific visual style. It was, of course, reminiscent of skate parts, having a grungy, down-to-earth look and snappy cuts and handheld camera work. It felt like you were there, in the action, without the bells and whistles of a traditional set. This rawness was its secret sauce, allowing them to capture moments that felt authentic and edgy, again appealing to the youth culture at the time.
Cartoons and conclusions.
What did 2000s cartoons look like? Is there really less variety today? And has animation fallen off? Well, they definitely looked different. From the scratchy imperfections of Rugrats' hand-drawn line work to the clothing textures in Chowder, you saw a wider variety of techniques being used to create a wider variety of shows.
Be the same.
You can attribute some of this to the fact that many were still using traditional methods of animation in the early 2000s. The first season of SpongeBob, for instance, used hand-painted cells. This gave it a distinct, stylized look. For mainstream television channels like Cartoon Network, there simply was more experimentation and less consistency in the visual style of programs. Compare Courage the Cowardly Dog to Samurai Jack, and then look at their selection today. They are by no means bad.
Teen Titans Go, Adventure Time, Steven Universe, Uncle Grandpa, Ninjago, whatever you want to say, Gumball, Clarence, Magiswords, Regular Show, and Mixels. I'm not gonna lie, the only show I'm not watching here is Mixels and Magiswords. And that's only because like I never watched them or heard about them, honestly. I don't even know what era it's from. Where every other show here, I would actually watch. Clarence was one of those like new shows where I was kind of older and not really like rocking with cable and shit like that. But I'm not gonna lie, it wasn't that bad. Like I'm not gonna lie, I'm not gonna shit on it. It's not bad. I'd give Clarence like a C+, honestly. And then Uncle Grandpa, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't fuck with it at first. But I'm not gonna lie, it's whatever. I learned to like tolerate it. You know, I'd give it like a C, you know. This is like some random bullshit, you know. Teen Titans Go, you know, I watched OG Teen Titans, so you know, I kind of had a little hater phase, but it's honestly not that bad. You know, it's very kiddie-like, comedic, but I mean, it's not that bad. You know what I'm saying? I can't shit on it. Man, I wish I had a time machine off. Facts, same. Uncle Grandpa is the worst cartoon of all time. It's not that bad. It's not that bad. And Clarence, yeah, Clarence is valid for me.
Shows, but they seem to hardly differ aesthetically. The lines are all sharp and clean, with solid blocks of color.
And I know a lot of niggas love some Steven Universe. You know, I know that's like the fan favorites now, you know what I'm saying? But it's whatever. I just haven't watched too much of it, but when I did, I mean, it didn't really like capture my interest all that much, but you know, it's still valid. You know, you know.
In comparison to the 2000s, they look kind of simplistic. So why is that, and where did all the other shows go? Well, in the 2010s, something called the Cal art style started to spread in animation. You can spot it in shows like Steven Universe, The Amazing World of Gumball, and Gravity Falls. Think exaggerated features, minimal shading and heads shaped like beans. This gave shows a uniform look and proved more efficient than traditional or hybrid techniques from the past. It also was just safer. A chunk of people will always find stylized shows like Courage the Cowardly Dog ugly, and Cal Arts is just less abrasive. There's fantastic shows in both.
Any nigga saying Courage was ugly, don't talk to me. That ass. Any nigga saying any show from around that era is ugly, don't talk to me at all. Definitely don't say Billy and Mandy was ugly. I might punch you in your fucking mouth. Don't say Kids Next Door is ugly. I might just drop kick you from the fucking turnbuckle. Like, bro, those shits are fire. That was amazing. I can't believe that shit. What the hell?
This just partly explains why there's less visual variety on TV. So, has animation just fallen off then? I mean, this is Rugrats today. The answer to that is no. It's just moved. Primal, Arcane, Love, Death and Robots. People are still experimenting, only not on the traditional platforms.
That's a good take.
The guy who made Samurai Jack is still going strong, and there's plenty of variety even here on YouTube. While it's true that children's entertainment is dominated by cheap 3D slop, that's far from the case everywhere. But in a nutshell, that's why 2000s cartoons looked like that, and why they don't anymore. If you want to know why Excrement looks like that...
Good ass vid per usual, man. I really fuck with that one, man. I'm gonna give it a like too. I like that, bro. We fuck with Excrement. Yes, sir.